A Bullet in the Ballet by Caryl Brahms and S.J. Simon. Abridged and read by David Rumelle. Episode 8. 3 dancers having died or been murdered in the same role, Inspector Quill may just have a new theory to follow.
Quill returned to the collodium that afternoon to find the foyer besieged by ballet-mains, rather small ballet-mains with rather smart mammas. Saturday afternoons were scholars' afternoons at the Ballet Stroganoff. Quill, making his way through the bobbing sea of curls, spotted Stroganoff beamingly at anchor by the box office. In a burst of well-being, Stroganoff turned to the nearest unknown in the bobbing sea and patted its disgusted head. "Oh, so you come to see Cairns-Noisette Stroganoff? Worse luck." The unknown hunched its shoulders. "What?" said the impresario, astounded. "You do not like the Cairns-Noisette Stroganoff?" "No." Stroganoff tried again. "You clasp me by the leg. Next you will be telling me that you prefer Le Cinema." The unknown nodded eagerly. "Le Mickey Mouse?" inquired Stroganoff, but this, it appeared, was Sissy. "Then," said Stroganoff sagely, "you will like the choreography Navajno. Très tough guy. Bien, bump off. I give you ticket if you like for Gare du Nord." But the unknown waved it scornfully aside. Defeated, Stroganoff wandered away to bestow his affability elsewhere. Quill went off to the auditorium. He made his way to Stroganoff's box, which was occupied by the Ballet-Medico, gazing sulkily at the stage. He looked at Quill without seeing him, and burst into a torrent of denunciation. Quill received the invective with a nod and settled beside him. He would have been glad to escape elsewhere, but he had remembered his speculations about Navajno and wanted the opinion of the Ballet-Medico concerning them. Eventually the curtain came down to much juvenile applause. "Appalling," said the Ballet-Medico. "Cheer up," said Quill. "Might have been by Navajno." "In which case I wouldn't be here." "You don't like Navajno?" "He's mad." The Ballet-Medico dismissed him from the conversation, but Quill brought him back. "Mad enough to be certified?" "Absolutely, if only," said the Ballet-Medico wistfully. "I had a ballet-loving colleague. I'd see to it myself. Anything to stop the fellow." "But who then would dance the more on Wednesday week before Benoit himself if he come?" quoted Quill glibly. The Stroganoff touch awoke the Ballet-Medico to Quill's presence. "Oh, it's you," he said in some relief. "I thought it was Stanley." Quill laughed. "He's busy finding the murderer for me." "Talking of the murderer," said the Ballet-Medico with interest, "I've come to a conclusion that I rather admire the fellow. He hasn't killed a good dancer yet. The man has taste. I wish he'd exercise it more often." "He very likely will." "Hope so," said the Ballet-Medico blandly. "You know," he confided, "I sympathise with him to some extent. I've often felt like murdering Anton Palouk myself after one of his triumphal appearances. And as for killing Pavel before he could lay hands on Petrushka, why, it was nothing but the action of a public benefactor." "Am I to take it," asked Quill, "that you believe the Petrushkas were killed because they danced badly?" The Ballet-Medico sighed. "Oh, I wish I could believe it. It's the sort of censorship the Ballet Stroganoff needs." Quill took the plunge. "It is one of the police theories that these murders might be the work of a madman." The Ballet-Medico saw the point. "You mean there's someone who the sight of a Petrushka prompts to homicide?" "Perhaps. Might be something in it," said the Ballet-Medico thoughtfully. "I had a patient once who felt that way about crooners, but then his wife had eloped with one." Quill remembered the boutiques. A ballet dancer would hardly mind that. "Agreed," said the Ballet-Medico. "On the other hand, they can work themselves into passions over matters that to the tennis club minder are utterly without importance." "I've noticed that," said Quill. "Take Navajno, for instance. You can't insult the fella in a normal manner. Call him every name under the sun, sleep with his mistress, or slap his face, and the chances are that he won't even notice it. But any slight, real or imaginary, on his work brings him foaming to his feet." "He must be pretty active when you're about," Quill laughed, and proceeded to take advantage of the opening. He explained his suspicions, said he was planning to interview Navajno the next morning, and pointing out that whilst the police surgeon knew a lot about insanity, He knew nothing about ballet dancers and might easily be confused by the somewhat similar symptoms, begged the Ballet-Medico to accompany him. The latter jibbed a bit, protesting that he had had an appointment, that he was not speaking to Navarsno, and that anyway Navarsno lacked the taste to have done the murders, but Quill insisted. They wrangled through 2 acts, and it was not until the final curtain of Casse-Noisette that the Ballet-Medico capitulated. They fixed the rendezvous for the following morning. Then Quill went off to see Stroganoff, who was talking to Stanley. "Go away," he said. But it appeared that this is what Stanley wanted. He'd come to ask for the evening off. "Impossible," said Stroganoff promptly. "Who then will lead the applause in the upper circle?" "Well, doesn't the upper circle applaud for itself?" asked Quill. This seemed a new angle on stage life. "For the ballet at Navarsno, no," said Stroganoff. "And tonight we give Gare du Nord, and Navarsno, he is sensitive to l'insolence." "But," said Stanley, "I promised to help the police, and I want time off to follow up a most important clue." Stroganoff looked at Quill incredulously. "You have asked Stanley to help?" "He's offered," said Quill tactfully. Stroganoff shrugged. "In that case, I give Stanley the permit, and Appelsine, he can go and shout bis instead." "Not Appelsine," said Stanley, panic-stricken. Quill suppressed a smile. So, this was Stanley's suspect. Stroganoff, too, had divined the situation. "You come here to tell me that you suspect my Appelsine?" "I'm revealing nothing for the moment," said Stanley, the Sphinx. "But you have revealed. Appelsine to murder Pavel? Poof!" "Stranger things have been known," said Stanley, darkly. "All right," said Stroganoff. He had tired of this unprofitable discussion. "And meanwhile you get out, no?" That night Quill sat in his room, reading with a certain amount of jealousy about an obnoxiously successful French detective, and avoiding night starvation on the rather unsatisfactory gas cooker provided by Miss Treacle. It was past midnight, and Quill was pleasantly tired. The evening at the theatre had been as uneventful as any evening containing a performance of Navarsno's Gare du Nord could be. Quill himself had been completely bewildered by the snarling locomotive that sprawled right across the backcloth, the weirdly dressed and unusually agile porters, the boiling of noises in the orchestra pit, and the station master, the choreographer himself, who spent all his time dancing with the more attractive passengers. The action was explained in the programme, but it did not help Quill much to be told that the station was the universe, the train fate, and the passengers the nobler emotions of the human soul, such as hatred, jealousy, vanity, and greed. Nevertheless, a part of the audience had seemed to like the ballet. Many of them were on their feet shouting "Brava!" "Superb!" and even "Navarsno!" But another fraction, led by the Ballet-Medico, sat back in their seats and talked contemptuously of design, dynamic, rhythm, plastic values, grouping, and line. Navarsno had made a speech containing a number of jibes and some dark allusions of a new and even more revolutionary work, on which he was at present engaged. Listening to him, Quill had found himself anticipating tomorrow's interview with a certain amount of apprehension. The French detective in Quill's book was just expatiating on psychology to an audience born to be admiring, when a knock on the door, which somehow managed to combine fury and prudery in equal proportions, brought him to his feet. Miss Treacle, her flannel dressing-gown, a raw pink, tasselled firmly round her waist, her hair braided for the night, gave tongue. "A lady to see you." The brevity of the sentence was more than compensated for by her expression. A horrid vision of Arienskaya, an abandoned Russian gypsy dropping feverish cigarette ends on Miss Treacle's carpet, floated before Quill's eyes. "Show her up," he said, resigned. "That I won't do," said Miss Treacle firmly. "Really, Mr. Quill, I'm surprised at you. My house has always been respectable. You'll see her downstairs in my drawing-room. The fire's gone out, but I can't help that." A week ago, Quill would have descended meekly to shiver in front of Miss Treacle's sister's wedding group, but now he had been infected with some of the buoyancy of the ballet Stroganoff. He was damned if he was going to catch cold to please Miss Treacle's furious sense of propriety. "You will show her up here," he said firmly. Miss Treacle tightened the tassel of her dressing-gown. "Never under my roof." "In that case," said Quill affably, "there'll be a spare room under it next week." "This room," he elaborated. "Are you giving me notice to vacate?" "Yes. Miss Treacle seemed about to snap an acceptance, but stopped short. Never late with the rent, never quibbles about extras, hardly ever in. Anyone else would certainly insist on having the room repapered. Is the lady a relative? She asked charitably, offering a loophole. My grandmother, said Quill. That, said Miss Treacle, allowing no trace of incredulity to appear on her features, is different. She stalked out and returned to usher in Rubinska. Thank you, Miss Treacle, said Quill. Not at all, Mr. Quill. The door snapped to, but not before a scornful grandmother had floated through it. Rubinska was clearly labouring under some emotion. She crossed impulsively to Quill, snatched at his hand, and gazed at him with large, pleading eyes. She was altogether adorable. You must promise me something. Of course, said Quill. In his relief that she was not Arienskaya, he was willing to promise anything. You must arrest Kasia Raniewski at once. Quill began to revise his views about promises. Why? To save his life. Don't you understand, said Rubinska impatiently. Nothing short of an arrest will stop him dancing Petrushka, and then he'll be killed. Has Stroganoff offered him the part? Not yet, but he's going to. I know he's going to. Everybody says so. But surely, said Quill, if you feel that way, you can persuade him to refuse. I've tried, said Rubinska. I've been trying all evening. But Kasia's too ambitious. He laughs at the danger. He even says there is no danger, and there is, isn't there? There may be, Quill was forced to admit. Then you must arrest him. Quill led her to a chair and fed her a cigarette. Now take it calmly, he said. You must realise for yourself that I can't take Kasia into protective custody on the strength of a superstition. Then you must order Stroganoff to give another ballet. Quill explained patiently that Scotland Yard could hardly order the cancellation of a ballet on the grounds that somebody might be murdered in it. They could not afford to advertise their incapacity in this manner. Then you will do nothing? Quill said every precaution would be taken. Plainclothes men would surround the stage. He was even toying with the idea of introducing some of his men into the crowd scenes. The killer, even assuming he would be at work again, would undoubtedly be caught afterwards. But first, said Rubinska, he'll kill my Kasia. Quill sighed. Your Kasia. A quaking hand knocked at the door, and an agitated finger drew Quill into the passage. There's a young man downstairs, hissed Miss Treacle. He's followed her. This is terrible. What shall we do? Show him up, said Quill. No, said Miss Treacle. I will not have bloodshed in my house. Oh, confide in me, Mr. Quill. Is he her husband? He's going to be, said Quill comfortingly. I knew it. Well, Miss Treacle, look out, she added, as the beaming face of Kasia came running upstairs. She has not left yet? Kasia inquired. She's gone, lied Miss Treacle, game to the last. Gone? She's here, said Quill. It's all right, he explained to Miss Treacle. We're not going to kill each other. This, he could not help adding, is my grandfather. Panic left Miss Treacle. She tightened her tassel and bade them an acid good night. Kasia followed Quill into the room and embraced Rubinska affectionately. So she hasn't persuaded you to arrest me? He grinned. Not quite, said Quill. All the same, he added, why don't you do what she asks and refuse the role? It hasn't been offered to me yet, said Kasia. If it is, I shall certainly take it. I've always longed to dance Petrushka. Rubinska moaned. But you'll be killed. Why should I be killed? The girl here, he explained to Quill, seems to think that there's some lunatic at large killing off every Petrushka in sight. She might even be right, said Quill gravely. Even if she is, said Kasia obstinately, I'm still taking the role if I get the chance. I'd be a fool to miss the opportunity. An opportunity you would never have had but for the murders, Quill pointed out. Kasia nodded. Oh, from that point of view, I'm grateful to the murderers. I'd almost commit murder myself to dance that role. Rubinska shrugged. Oh, you see, he's hopeless. Absolutely hopeless, agreed Kasia. But don't worry. If I get the role, Mr. Quill here will see to it that I'm not killed. I'll do my best, said Quill. My reputation won't stand a third murder.